Alright, here we are. Episode 94 of the Cozy Corner of Cinema being recorded on Thursday, January 11th, 2024 at 10:27 p.m. on quite a frigid night. It has been pretty gnarly these past couple of days. It's been windy as all hell. You go for a walk and then you just sort of feel that little bit of wind in the air, knowing that a whole rush is going to come on, and then it just makes the hairs on your arm stand. It's totally wild, so make sure you're layering up. If you're in an area where you're going to get a lot of cold air and wind, make sure you're wearing your jackets, your hats, all that good stuff, so that you're not walking around, shivering like God knows what. But it's just great, though. It's great to come to the end of the day feeling accomplished with, or hopefully you feel accomplished with what you set out to achieve for that day. So hopefully when you're in bed, you can look back and make sure and wonder if you use those hours to your advantage, if you wanted to use those hours however it is the way that you intended to do so, which in this case would be to get the work done, because the older you get, it's going to feel like time's going to be moving on faster and faster. Days are going to turn into weeks, into months, into years, and you're going to be asking yourself where all that time went, and you're not going to realize that right now you're just living in such a great time. Every day is such a great time. We all have our ups and downs, and the highs can be high and the lows can be low, but ultimately we are still here. We're still breathing. We still got our fingers and toes. Well, at least hopefully we have our fingers and toes. Hopefully you didn't get like frostbite or something like that. That'd be pretty gnarly. But hey, so whatever it is you got to do, you got to do it now, man. You can't be waiting on anybody else. Can't be waiting on somebody else to do what it is that you want to set out to do. You want to make the next great, American film. You want to, make the next great music album, any of that good stuff. Well, don't be putting it off. Get started, do something with it, man. People talking about their New Year's resolutions. We're 11 days into the new year, and how many people you think already gave up their resolutions? They're talking about, oh, I'm gonna go to Planet Fitness now. I'm gonna go to the gym. I'm gonna start working out. I'm gonna be eating healthier. I'm gonna do this and do that. And then meanwhile, the next day they're like, but maybe I'll have a big large pizza with a bunch of toppings on it, and I'm gonna sit around. I'm gonna be watching some game show, and I'll do it. I'll do it next month, and then. But hey, if that's what they want to do, if they want to eat a large pizza and sit in front of the TV and watch game shows, then God bless them, man. They're living the life they want to live, and they're not letting anybody stand in their way because of that. As long as you're not hurting yourself or anybody else. I mean, dude, if you're making your car payments and they're like, oh, I only got X amount of money left to my name. What am I gonna do? I think I'm gonna spend it on pizza. It's like, brother, you gotta prioritize your own situation. But everybody's different. Everyone's got different situations, different backgrounds, different advantages and disadvantages. So that's all that really matters. That you're focusing on focusing on the work that you need to accomplish and to make your life the life that you want it to be, man. I want to give a brief shout out. Oh, he doesn't need it, but just a YouTuber who I've watched for quite a few years now, who is just such a total cozy favorite of mine, and that is Colin from 42nd Street Forever. He comes and goes in waves of uploading videos and not, but he's just one of these guys where you watch his videos and it's totally just real cozy kind of entertainment, man. He's a naturally funny guy. He's got a great insight and knowledge on a wide range of films. He just uploaded a new video talking about the an upcoming Abyss 4K. James Cameron's The Abyss, which will apparently be censored in the UK, which I wasn't aware of. One of the benefits of getting a lot of films in the United States is that rarely, if ever, are the films cut. And if they are, there's usually a notice about that. I think the only real example I could probably think of was that Monica Bellucci film, I think might still be cut in America. I've blanked on the name of it right now, but Imprint put out the Blu-ray of that a little while ago, uncut. But yeah, I wasn't even aware of the censorship there. So yeah, definitely give his channel a look, man. I really don't watch many, if at all, any kind of YouTube channels, like let alone like movie YouTube channels. They talk about movies and stuff. I mean, I have like my acquaintances and stuff who I'll subscribe to them and I'll support them and give them views and all that because I trust their opinions and I think they're wise people. But I'm not spending my time on YouTube or anything like that, man. And I'm not gonna be sitting around watching X, Y, and Z. It's just great. If I'm cooking something, I throw on his videos, and it's just great, just total great background noise. And I don't mean that as a diss on him at all. I say background noise in the highest form of flattery. But I'll put a link down below if you're listening on Spotify or on YouTube, which I do forget to mention. This show is on Spotify and YouTube, because I know I mostly get a lot of the traction from YouTube, but I get some people on Spotify. So if you're at work or something like that, or you're in a place where you can only listen on YouTube or whatever, you just leave this on in the background, or maybe if you're cooking or you're getting some work done or anything like that, it's all good. But yeah, no, it's funny. I was talking a couple days ago on the last Cozy Corner about the other audiobook I was in the throes, and I was just so engaged with it. And it was by the author of The Last Action Heroes, and it was his previous book, Wild and Crazy Guys: How the Comedy Mavericks of the 80s Changed Hollywood Forever. And I got to chapter 9, and I'm waiting for the next chapter to start. And I'm like, what the hell's going on? Did the app crash on me or something? And then I look, and I get the message from Spotify that tells me, you're out of audiobook listening time. Want more hours? And then there's a little message here. It says, your included listening hours renew in 16 days. At that time, it was 18 days. You can't buy extra listening hours in the app, but audiobook top-ups you've already purchased from Spotify can be used here. Which is wild, man. I mean, if you're already paying premium and and they give you a limit on that, it's wild as hell. Now, I guess you could pay for a separate audiobook subscription service, but at that point, it's like you're just paying out the wazoo for all these different services, man. It's just total nonsense. But yeah, it was a real shame. I'll have to come back to that when the time is available, when I'm able to, or I'll just pick up the book. That's one of the benefits of just any kind of physical media is like you actually have a book in your hand. And ebooks are great and all that. You have Kindles or Nooks, or you're reading on your telephone. That's all good and whatnot. But to actually hold that book in your hand and feel that sense of accomplishment when you finish it, you've made a conscious effort to devote this time to this piece of media in your hand. And when it's done and you get to that last page and you shut it, you can just kind of hold it in your hands and be like, all right, what's up next? It's just such a great feeling. So it's the same thing with films too. It's sort of like, oh, you're in the middle of a film, oh, internet craps out on you. It's like, oh, damn, man, but you got a Blu-ray, you got a DVD, VHS, Laserdisc, CD, whatever it is. That's yours, man. And nothing's permanent. Nothing's permanent on Earth, man. Life ain't permanent. Things here, this computer ain't permanent. But we're here for a certain amount of time, so we're gonna have to, really just kind of value the things that mean the most to us in the time that we still got it, man. Just to not be worried about the end, but really just cherish every day and cherish every moment with loved ones, friends, family, acquaintances, boyfriends, girlfriends, whatever it is, man. Just committing your life to the ultimate nirvana that it is you wish to achieve. Speaking of books, man, yeah, I was totally flattered to be gifted the Louis Buñuel's autobiography, My Last Sigh. I don't know what year this book was, but I will that'll be next up to read. I've already started something else in the meantime, so this will be up next. It's not a very long book, so it'll be very easy to get through. But Louis Buñuel is such an interesting filmmaker whose work has initially took some time to adjust to. I initially had some reservations about some of his work on the I don't even, it's not even essentially a preconceived notion, but essentially knowing about his reputation as this interesting early on kind of avant-garde filmmaker, making stuff with like Salvador Dali, with his early kind of silent stuff, and then moving on later into his career, which is really what he's most known for is his films later on in his career. But he's such a fascinating and interesting filmmaker. I've seen only about a handful of his films. I'm trying to think. I've seen The Discreet Charm of the Bourgeoisie. I've seen That Obscure Object of Desire. I've seen The Phantom of Liberty. I've seen The Exterminating Angel. I've seen Viridiana. I've seen Belle de Jour. And that might be it. I think there's a big gap of films I might be missing. So it'll be great to read that to get some sort of context. Because even when I was listening to that, the previous book, which I'm already blanking on the name of. I just had it up here about the guys in Hollywood in the '80s, the comedy stars. It really made me want to go and watch a lot of those films that I hadn't seen previously, or rewatch the ones to have a new sort of context on it. And actually, this tea is starting to get fairly warm enough. It's still kind of fairly hot. I don't want to burn my tongue on that. I like to drink hot drinks when I record this because it kind of soothes the throat, makes the vocals come out not as raspy. I don't want to really drink any cola or any alcoholic beverages or anything cold, you know. I like to drink coffee or tea or hot cocoa or any of that. So I'll wait for that to simmer down a bit. And I'll move on from there. There's been quite a lot watched in the past week. I've been trying to really kind of get a good kickstart going onto the new year, because essentially the goal every year is to just reach 1,000 watches. It's a goal that's been unintentionally attained for the past 3 years now, and I feel it's as some sort of duty to myself to kind of keep that up, as well as maintaining the work, not falling behind on the reading or the writing. And that's why audiobooks are so fantastic as well, because even if, you know, you're at work or driving, you have those moments of time, like say you're driving to the grocery store, you're driving 5, 10, 20, 30 minutes, whatever. Well, that's 5, 10, 20, 30 minutes you can advance on, you know, furthering your interests. Let's see here. But yeah, it can oftentimes be a little difficult to remember what films I talked about on this show. I have notes here for Sometimes Sweet Susan, and I don't think I talked about that, but I don't know. I'd have to look in my descriptions of the videos, because if not, then perhaps it looks like I did talk about it. Okay, yeah, I'm looking at my own description of episode number 92, where I talked about Forced Entry and Sometimes Sweet Susan. So I need to make a note of that I don't need to go back to that, because then there is another film here which I know I didn't talk about, so I guess I will go ahead into that. Make a note of that here. Is that I try not to drink too much into the microphone, because I don't want it to be like one of those eating and drinking kind of videos where people eat into the microphone. Oh my goodness gracious, man! I tell you, it looks like bugs in your ear, man. It's like those creatures from like Star Trek 2, The Wrath of Khan, that they put in Chekhov's ear, and the other fellow whose name I don't remember. The mind control sort of worms. It's gnarly as hell. It's tonally out of place with the rest of the film. It's like a horrifying sequence, and it's got it's like squirting out this like blood, but it's so gnarly. It's just such a great moment in the film, and an already just excellent film. It just brings it up to a level that. At least up to that point, I don't think Star Trek has ever gotten that dark. But it's been quite a while since I've refreshed on the original series, so don't quote me on that. But I want to talk about this film here. This film here from the year 1978. I want to bring up this film because right at the top I will say that it is not the easiest film to find. Well, it is and it isn't. Let me put it that way. You can find this film, 1978, written and directed by Alan Rudolph, Remember My Name, starring Geraldine Chaplin, Anthony Perkins, Moses Gunn, and Barry Berenson, as well as an early role from Jeff Goldblum and Alfre Woodard, who have memorable but small roles in the film. And there are no small roles in any film, or in life for that matter. It's like no small parts in your car. People say like, oh, you know, I don't know where I fit in. It's like, brother, why don't you go ahead and take a couple screws out of the engine of your car and like see how well that runs, man. It's like you hit a bump and like say another screw gets loose and so far and so forth. You know, it's ain't no small parts, because that's why we're still talking about them. But this film is interesting because I saw Brian Sauer posted about it, and he was mentioning that this was going to be off streaming services fairly soon, within the next couple days. So I was on that like white on rice, man. I was like, I got to watch this film before it's too late. And I was able to watch it on Amazon Prime in a very nice quality HD version. And it was also on Tubi as well, but there's no ads on Prime. Actually, there's going to be ads. I was reading that the other day. So it's like, go figure that. You're paying for a service and they're still giving you ads for it. I don't mind on like Tubi or Freevee. You know, I mean, ads really aren't that big of a deal. I'm just saying, you don't want to get your focus out of a film by some commercials or anything like that. But But this film is available online as well to watch, so it's not impossible to watch or anything like that. But this doesn't have a home media release at all, to my knowledge. I couldn't find any pictures of a VHS or any sort of release. No DVD, definitely no Blu-ray. I mean, it might be a website that would sell like bootleg DVDs or anything like that, and there's a couple that are pretty easily attainable. A couple websites that may or may not sell this. I don't know. There was one website that I had that was selling a bunch of rare films on bootleg DVDs, and I actually should have checked if they had that. But it's a film that is worth looking for because it's a very interesting film. Alan Rudolph was a protege of Robert Altman. Originally worked on a couple of his films. He was the DP or the second unit director on, I want to make sure I got this right, on actually some of the strongest stuff. On The Long Goodbye. Speaking of talking about Arnold last week, I mentioned that film on there. And my favorite Robert Altman film, California Split, in 1974, before being promoted to the AD on Nashville in 1975. And actually, funny enough, speaking of Geraldine Chaplin, who was also in Nashville, so nice little connection there. But it's a film that, what I was talking about a little while ago with Dying Room Only, it's the best kind of film to really not look up anything about it, because with both of these films, the whole first act is so, it really pulls you in. It's so engaging, so I'm going to be kind of choicey with some of my words here, but don't worry, I'm not going to say too much that will ruin the film for you, because even some synopses online give a little bit too much in terms of how the film is paced and what the film chooses to reveal and not to reveal at certain times. But at the beginning of the film, we're following basically two different kinds of stories. We're following this girl, Emily, played by Geraldine Chaplin, who's just getting out of prison. You know, she's acting a little funky. She's going to like this clothes store. She's like kind of like, seems a little off, so to speak. And we're also following Anthony Perkins, who plays his character Neil. He's working at this like kind of construction job. You know, he has a nice kind of content life with his wife, Barbara Curry, played by Barry Berenson. Actually, I saved that 5 times fast. Who in real life, the two of them were actually married. Anthony Perkins died in the mid 90s, I believe, 92. Tragically died of AIDS, and Barry Berenson tragically died in the 9/11 attacks. She was on one of the planes, so I learned that after the fact, so it kind of gives some perspective onto watching this film, because she didn't do many films, Barry Berenson that is. She only did about 4, including Paul Schrader's Cat People. Actually, she really technically only did 3. She did an episode of a show as well as Scruples, and she also did 1979's Winter Kills, which is a very good film as well. That's gotten some talk, I know, recently because of the Video Archives podcast, and I assumed I recorded that off TCM, and I assumed that's why they had shown it, because of Tarantino's mention of that. But I also wasn't aware it also has a Blu-ray from Indicator, so I would recommend that film as well. I'm actually kind of surprised I didn't talk about that film on the show. I probably would have if I remembered to. You watch so many films, you just forget these things. But we're following these parallel stories. We have, Emily moves into this apartment. Her neighbor, Pike, played by Moses Gunn, is a cop, and she wants to be friendly with him. He wants to keep his distance, but she's being kind of pushy. She's going into his apartment. He's being firm. He's really being like, hey, get away. And we're like, what is going on here? And it's a great feeling, because the first 20, 25 minutes or so, I mean, all these scenarios are just running through your head. Like, why are these two storylines going on? Why? They're not connecting at any point so far. And as the film goes on, eventually there is a merging of some sorts, and I think that's kind of really all I really want to say about there. And that's not to say it's a film that is very heavy on a traditional narrative, because one of the positives, and perhaps maybe even one of the negatives to some people, depending on who you are, is that the film is very ambiguous with a lot of its specifics in the plot. Because the first half is a lot of build-up. It's a lot of build-up where Geraldine Chaplin's character, Emily, is putting herself closer and closer to these people. What I was saying before is that they eventually do merge. So they're getting closer and closer. She starts to work at this department store ran by Jeff Goldblum in a really solid role. He's he's one of these actors who at a certain point kind of became his personality as an actor kind of got in the way of his characters, I believe. But he's an actor, and I feel kind of the same way about Sam Jackson and these kind of actors. Both terrific actors, don't get me wrong, but I look at actors like that and I think of a time where they were doing really interesting, kind of different, unique roles. Like Sam Jackson was doing stuff like The Red Violin and those kind of films. And Alfred Woodard is great in the film as well. She has a small part as she's like a cashier at this place. Kind of just immediately is telling Emily, is like, don't give me any attitude, don't do this and that. She's being very stern with her, and understandably, they get off on the wrong foot. But it's got all this great build up, and then it was interesting reading some of the reactions to this film afterwards because this film didn't. There's actually a great write up on the New Beverly's website. Speaking of Tarantino, actually, they were talking about some of the distribution issues with the film, some of the soundtrack issues with the film, and some of the reasons why, in part of the soundtrack and the distribution as well, why this never had a physical release. Why I never got cleared for when I really got lost in the shuffle at the wrong time. And I think now with Vinegar Syndrome cinematograph line with I feel like this would be perfect for that. This is a film that would be destined for rediscovery like that because it's great. By the way, it's great to see Red Rock West get a Blu-ray here. That just got a Blu-ray from Umbrella, but I didn't order the Umbrella one yet. I didn't get an opportunity to, or at least I think I forgot to, so I grabbed the cinematograph one. But this film it's got a lot of great build up, and the second half I think works really strong as well. But the third act is where it might turn some people off. Now, when it comes to Dying Room Only, I would say that my problem more so with that film, and I'm only comparing them in the sense of just kind of my initial reactions to having this really really great first half and bit of a letdown second half. Where with Dying Room Only, it falls into kind of a standard TV movie last act, but the rest of the film is still so solid and the mystery is so great there that while it does harpen the narrative, it doesn't harpen the entire film. With Remember My Name, it's far more ambiguous than that. Where it was a film where I thought I actually had to rewind and look up some stuff because I thought I had missed something and I did and I didn't, and I'm trying to be vague with what I'm trying to say here, and actually the tea is just about warm, so. Oh my gosh, that's so delicious. So delicious. I gotta have another sip of this. I'm trying not to drink it to the microphone, so I do apologize if that came through, but brother, if you were tasting what I was tasting, I'll tell you. When it comes to more so the third act than the second half, is when the ambiguity start to become strong. The conclusions are not entirely there, and I'd be interested to read exactly about some of the how much of the script in the third act was intentional or not, because it's interesting the pacing of this. It builds to a methodical, almost snail-like pace, and I don't mean that as a detriment to the film. I mean that in the kindness of compliments, because you're eager to understand what is happening. You feel alienated. That in the third act, it to me it felt like it rushed to a conclusion without really having one. And that's not to say I need an end to this story, this plot. I'm not in third grade, man. I don't need an ABC narrative. I'm just saying that when it got to the end of the film, when it duplicates a shot from earlier, and you're realizing that it's the end of the film, I remember just sitting there going like, this feels almost in a way like not even that it was a rushed script, but it feels like I'm trying to find a way to say it without sounding like a jerk, because if I say it feels like a first draft, that sounds like a detriment, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but it does feel like maybe there was something else missing in some, like the characters just kind of wander off. It doesn't really feel. It feels like there's more there that's going on, more so than just an ambiguous sort of conclusion. And that's not even a problem on the film. I'm just saying that it feels distant from the first part of this film. Not that it's building. It feels like it's building to something that ultimately isn't totally paying off. Not that I need a payoff. I'm just saying that with a film like this, the fact that it was so methodical in its pacing, for it to kind of shrug off a third act it's a little awkward at first, but in time, having thought about this film and having sat on it, I think it does actually kind of work overall to the feeling of the film because it's a tricky film to market, and I think that's one of the reasons why they probably had trouble getting this film out there because both the posters don't really do the film justice. I mean, you read the tagline and it's like it doesn't even really match the film. It says everybody knows a woman is fragile and helpless. Everyone's wrong. The title, remember my name, dot dot dot, or else. And you get the idea of like something more exploitive, something more cult. And it's not that. It feels closer to an Altman film. And I don't mean that solely because Alan Rudolph was a close associate of Altman. It feels more so in the way that the characters kind of interact with one another and we're kind of just in the lives of these people. And there is this core event, but it's not overbearing and overtaking the rest of the film. I can't give too much of a comparison to any of Alan Rudolph's other directorial work. He's a filmmaker who's done quite a bit, and this may be the only film of his I've seen, if I'm being honest with you, because he's done films like Choose Me, he's done The Secret Lives of Dentists, Premonition, Welcome to L.A., and Endangered Species, which I think that might be a genre film. I'm not exactly sure. I've definitely seen that cover a whole bunch, but it's interesting because with Altman's films that he is so great with characters, and even in a film like Images or something of the like, when you're going for something more hallucinatory and something more transgressive, here you still have that great connection to both the leads in that film. Much in the same way here that even when it does feel a little wonky at times, you're never not connected with the film, and you always feel some sort of engagement to living with these people. There's a great long sequence in the third act of characters getting progressively drunk at a bar, and it's not as if there's any kind of real revelation in that moment, a real kind of, in a lesser screenplay, it would be an excuse for the characters to get drunk and reveal vital information that, oh, I was drunk, I wasn't supposed to reveal that. And it doesn't do that. It just allows us to be with these characters in a way that's so strong. In a film like this, I think that without people championing it or people talking about it, it gets lost in the shuffle, much in the same way that, I mentioned before, Winter Kills from 1979. I think a lot of people knew about that film, and I don't think that film was available for a while, but then you get somebody like Tarantino, and he talks about it on his podcast, and it gets a whole new life on there where he talks about, it goes on a talk show and he talks about Hands on a Hard Body, and then that gets people to turn it on to it, and they recommend it to other people, and so on and so forth. It's just like these films need to be talked about in circulation in a way that we have almost every film we can think of at our fingertips. I say almost every film because obviously, there's exceptions, there's lost films. It's funny, I just read a book and it was talking about the pre-World War. It was talking about German films up until World War II, and there was a couple of films there I had written down, only to find out that they were just completely lost. So you got to be kind of careful with that sort of stuff because a lot of these films. This is a more closer. This is 1978 compared to pre-World War II, so it's not the same batch. But if these films are not talked about and they're not being passed along besides the general kind of mainstream milieu, then no one's looking for them, then it's sort of like they just get progressively more and more lost. No one thinks anybody wants these films, and then they're lost to time when they could have a whole new resurgence. You think of films like Wake and Fright that had this whole resurgence and, got, released multiple times by, like, Draft House releasing and Eureka, and now that has a whole new life, and it's considered to be one of the great Australian films, man. But time is not on my side, so I hope you guys have enjoyed this talk. Thank you for listening yet again. We'll be back next week for another episode. So, hey, make your dreams come true, work on your art, work on whatever it is you need to work on, and enjoy your life, because it's the only one you got, unless you believe in reincarnation, but you might come back as like a stink bug or something, and I can't really do a whole lot there. So just enjoy the time you got, enjoy your life, have a beautiful day, drink water, eat healthy, go to bed early, wake up early, live your life the way you want to live it. Thanks so much, guys.